Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Batman issue 4 by Matt Fraction, Jorge Jimenez and Tormo Mori. Batman's troubles in Gotham get even worse this issue as at the port of Gotham a violent gunfight breaks out. A giant fire breaks out over in the slabs and 3 businessmen are gunned down in Wolf Hill. Fraction's new mysterious villain, the Minotaur, makes his debut as he has been monitoring the outpouring of violence, unable to comprehend just how all this was done over a truck. Minotaur knows that 2 nights prior, the Clanori and Black Fang gangs ran an off-the-books job, keeping it from him, and he saw the Clanari pay the Fang in uncut diamonds that the Fang then owed to the Thieves Guild. Minotaur's clearly overworked and overtired tech guy knows the diamonds were stashed in a Besna truck's gas tank, and a third party tried to steal that truck, leading to a gunfight, and then the truck getting impounded by the GCPD, so then no one gets the diamonds. But then, just that night before, it all erupted and now 3 of their partners are locked in a gang war over a mere coincidence. Minotaur thinks that coincidence brings good fortune, but this is a conspiracy and they have a rat and they have to deal with it. I really love that Fraction is just doing this with his new character. He's just kind of jumping into him. We're not really given this big grand entrance to him. We get that a little later on in the issue, but I like that the first time we see him, he's kind of in shadow. He's just doing his work. He's just getting on with the job. And that's kind of what he is being introduced in as this. He's the guy who just worries about the work, not about Batman or any other hero or anything. He just does the job, and that's what he is there for. I quite like how efficient that is. The book's also starting to explore something I'm very interested in, which is the crime, the underworld of Gotham and how it works, all the behind the scenes stuff of it, because the city is filled with quite a number of gangs. So like, how do they not step on each other's feet? And when they do, what happens? And I like that there is now that cog in that machine, the Minotaur, explaining, oh, when that happens, this is what happens to all of them. And that's really quite cool. I like all the little nitty gritty stuff that Fraction is doing here. The Minotaur demands that every party involved, even the ones barely part of the whole gang war, have their accounts frozen, since if the only thing these animals understand is money, then none of them will have it until they decide to act like real men. Elsewhere in Gotham, Bruce comes to see Dr. Zeller at her office, finding the woman working out on a treadmill while also going through some files. She tells Bruce that she is busy, not even turning to look at him, and instead he's got to talk to Dr. Batman, which confuses Bruce, but the woman points out a stuffed Batman on the wall, citing how engineering called him Dr. Batman, and Bruce should ask his question in detail to the plush toy, since everyone has to go through him to get to her. So this technically is the first meeting of Bruce and Zeller. Bruce did meet her as Batman, and I really like how off guard Bruce is being caught by this woman. He's finding her quite strange, but also he's clearly very interested in her thanks to the work she's doing, and then finding out a little bit more about what type of woman she is. So it's fun seeing Fraction play this kind of romance game between Bruce and Zeller. It feels very rom-com inspired. Zeller soon gets frustrated with Bruce since he doesn't understand anything she's saying, so Zeller explains how solutions to problems show themselves when a person explains the problem to her. So she wants him to just talk to Dr. Batman so she can just listen to Bruce's problem. Bruce reluctantly talks to the plushie, asking it why the project needs titanographene since it's rare, patented, and expensive to fabricate. Zeller knows that it will help reinforce the Crown of Storms and make it last longer, comparing it to becoming no different from a pacemaker, and she wants to make it a permanent thing for some of the people who need it. She knows that it's expensive, but there is more to this than profit, like actually helping the mentally ill. Bruce tires of her games and stops her treadmill, catching Zeller as she almost falls from the device, as he finally introduces himself. Zeller actually wonders if they have met before, but Bruce knows that they have, but of course he tells her that they haven't, and this is the first time he's actually been in the building, since after Riddler tried stealing the Crown of Storms, he thought he would pop his head in to see if everything was okay. Zeller brushes Bruce's hand away, knowing that if a robbery would bring Bruce Wayne down from the mountain, she would have broken in herself a year ago. Bruce decides to head out, telling Zeller that they are going to have dinner tomorrow night at 7, so they can talk all about her and her experiments. Zeller is actually confused to learn that she technically has a date with Bruce Wayne. I really quite like a woman who's not caught up in Bruce's charm just because he's, this billionaire playboy. She has her own things to worry about. She's kind of in her own head, thinking about all her research and everything. She doesn't have time for romance, and like that's sort of, as I've said before, it's like the rom-com setup. Here you've got where you've got the man pining after the woman, but she's, too busy in her work. Eventually she's going to see what type of man he is, and I can see where it's going. I'm intrigued to see what Fraction is going to do with it. As one of Zeller's engineers asks if she's got some real shoes for her date, not the Crocs she's been wearing, Houston is shown around the bullpen of the Gotham Eye by Jack Dean, who knows the paper has seen better days, but Houston knows that capitalism is to blame, which Jack knows is right. But then there was also the internet when that came along with money vampires who sucked the assets of the place dry. Then came downsizing, layoffs, and buyouts. Houston asks what happened to Jack, and he says he was just plainly fired since he's a drunk, something which shocks Houston since he thought Jack still worked at the paper. So this is the stuff I was really hoping was going to stick around in the book for a long time, and it looks like Fraction is actually picking up on it almost like straight away, which I'm really happy for. I really like this idea of just regular kid and this kind of grizzled old reporter. He's an alcoholic, he's a drunk, and I guess the idea is that Houston's going to sort of like reignite the fire in Jack and kind of bring back that love for journalism that he had, because he has a real story in the city that he could break, and I'm intrigued to see where that story is going to go, because obviously it's going to build up to them trying to take Vandal out of power, I guess, and I guess it's going to also explore the underbelly of Gotham and how corrupt everything has gotten under Vandal. I imagine it's not just the police who are now corrupt. I imagine it's every faucet of the city is somehow in Vandal's pocket. So I'm intrigued to see how Houston's story and how Jack's story come together, and then they come together with Batman's story about trying to track down who the Minotaur is, what his deal is, and how Vandal fits into all of this. Jack soon comes across his old boss, and after a short meeting to tell him about the story Houston came to him with, Jack storms out of the office, finding the editor won't run the story and instead just railroaded him completely. With no choice, Houston and Jack leave the office to find another way to get the story out, and as they leave, the news reports on how red steam is now billowing out of the manholes all across Gotham. But Gotham Water and Power insist nothing is wrong and everything is fine. So I do believe that this smoke is related to the Minotaur, since at the start of the issue he told his people to put the smoke out, and that's actually what this story is called. So I really like that it's this subtle warning for the criminals to, the money's turned off, it's red, it's in the red, basically. There's no more deals, no more contracts or anything going out because there's no money for that. And I quite like that. I quite like getting to see, as I said before, that street level stuff, that behind the scenes workings of how all this stuff in Gotham works under the Minotaur, and how all these criminals work together while also working against each other. Deep in the Clanari-owned Bowery, Anarchy knows that something is wrong, hurrying to get his gear and mask together as two goons are tossed through his covered-up windows, one of which has a note pinned to him. The note asks if these are friends of Lonnie's, since they seem rather stupid. Realizing who wrote the note, Anarchy bolts from his apartment and tries to escape out of one of the back windows by jumping out of it, but Batman grabs him as he dives out the window, wondering what Lonnie's plan was for this. Batman swings Anarchy back into the building, but the villain sprays him in the face with some green spray paint, disorientating Batman if but for a second, and that's not long enough as Batman catches up to Anarchy almost instantly, kicking him in the face and knocking him out. After a while, Lonnie awakens to Batman questioning him about the truck he tried to steal and how he failed, and in doing so, the gangs of Gotham are now all out to get him. So I kind of like that we never actually saw Batman catch wind of this whole fiasco, and we just kind of get it from the villain POV and from what they are experiencing of the Minotaur shutting everything down and how that's affected everything. And then we see Batman here just kind of finally getting wind of it, and he literally smashes his way into the story, like literally smashes his way into a building and into the big plot. Batman knows that this doesn't add up, since how did a truck Anarchy didn't steal make him the Gotham Underworld's most wanted? Lonnie doesn't understand either, since someone paid him $1,000 to steal the truck and dump it in the river. But everything went bad, something Batman knows is a complete undersell of the situation. Lonnie is desperate and wants to turn state's evidence, wanting to be taken in by the cops and protected, making Batman realize that the man is scared, so he wants to know what he is running from. Lonnie doesn't know if Batman is messing with him or not, since hasn't the hero noticed how quiet it's been in Gotham, since there's nobody but small-time street gangs doing jobs now, since there's a new guy in charge of Gotham's organized crime, and he really has it organized now. So I kind of like that Batman is kind of on the back foot with all of this Minotaur stuff. He's only just now catching up to it. He's been dealing with stuff like Riddler and Killer Croc and Zeller and all of the Crown of Storm stuff, so he's not really been paying attention to organized crime in the city. So I like that he's still just catching up to it. You get someone like Anarchy to kind of tell him what's going on, so there's also that added fact that, is Anarchy actually telling the truth about all of this, or is this just Anarchy trying to mess with Batman? So I like that there is a Batman who's on the back foot. He doesn't know what's going on, and I am intrigued to see what he learns about the Minotaur, because from what we've seen, the Minotaur is still very much a mystery. No one really knows who he is. They just know that there is someone and he is controlling everything in organized crime. I also really like that we have a new villain who didn't immediately go after Batman. Like, we see countless new villains get introduced and their whole thing is, oh, they're gonna fight Batman, or they're doing something in Gotham that's deliberately getting Batman's attention, or like their whole idea is to confront Batman. And Minotaur's is the complete opposite. He doesn't want that. He wants to lay low and just go about his business, make money, not step on Batman's toes, because doing that, you know, brings the Dark Knight down on you. So it's really smart that this villain is operating in the city and just doesn't want anything to do with Batman, or nothing to get out to him. At Old Wayne Manor, Vandal Savage welcomes the tourists, the collective of gangs of Gotham, to the manor, telling them that they all have his personal guarantee of their safety while there. So I completely forgotten that Vandal had moved into Wayne Manor, but I like it's now being used for all his evil crime meetups. It's also a huge perversion of what that house once stood for, and I wonder if there is any plans for Bruce to get that back somehow, since he really hasn't made an effort to try to do that. And I know he's gotten the Pennyworth house in the city, and the whole point of that was to get him closer into the city so the city could then be part of his family a bit more and be a character unto itself. But getting that manor back should mean something to Bruce as well, you know, it's his family home. I would like to see more of this type of story. I imagine Fraction does have something in store for this part of the plot, because it was one of the plots left over from, you know, bringing Vandal over, and, you know, he's gonna kind of have to deal with it at some point. So either him or the next writer is going to have to do with it. He's got to do some story cleanup of Vandal and the manor, and imagine that's coming in the next couple of arcs at some point. So it has to. That's such a long hanging plot thread that I'm surprised it has not been taken care of yet. The Taurus' meeting begins and the Minotaur rears his head finally, explaining how the Taurus is one of the prime knots made up of 7 independent but interconnected loops, made to be unbreakable when together. He tells the 6 gathered gangs that this is what they are, with him as the bank, managing all of their contacts and trade rates, but as long as all 7 of them work together, there is harmony. So we also find out that the Minotaur has 7 fingers on his hand. Again, there's that symbolism of the Taurus with the 7 ropes and everything, but I wonder if there's anything more to that, like maybe he's some type of metahuman or something, which is why he's able to do so well in this field he's in. Like maybe he's using his powers for something. I'm intrigued to see if there's anything more, or maybe that's just a funky quirk that this character has. We do get a good look at like who he is, and I quite like the design too. It's a very simple design for a new character. A lot of times whenever a new character is brought in by a writer and artist, I often feel they get over designed just to try and make them memorable on, you know, that cover, that first cover. But I like the Minotaur's quite simple design. You know, he's just a guy in a suit. He's got 7 fingers on one hand, and he's got kind of like a cool like Minotaur-esque helmet. It's just a very simple design, and I quite like that. The Minotaur knows that before all of this, profits were up 418%, but now they are down $4.4 million each. So he froze all of their accounts and thought if money means more than their bond to these people, then cutting everyone off would get their attention. To ensure the message is crystal clear, Minotaur reveals that he has brought some of the gang's families there, revealing his men are ready to shoot them all in the head. I got quite the big chuckle out of this reveal, as all of the gang's families is revealed, and then the Penguin, who was there representing the Thieves Guild just has a fucking random ass penguin named Lola who's there since all his family are either dead or just forgotten about. So it's just so funny. Like, they could have had, I think he's got like one son left named Black Sun. He's like a metahuman. He might be in a vegetative state or something, but I just like that they completely forgot about him and they just brought just this random ass penguin. It's so funny. Minotaur tells the shocked criminals that the Taurus really is an algorithm of crime, and he is the only one who can see the equation and use it, and he's used it to build the most resilient criminal empire ever, citing how they are friendly with the police force, the press, City Hall, and Batman is too busy to realize what is happening and how successful they have been. Raising his 7-fingered hand, he tells them that when one of them earns, they all earn, and when one of them bleeds, they all bleed. He closes his fist and the families of the gangs are all shot by the guards as Batman takes off across Gotham, thinking about how Anarchy told him about the Minotaur and how he has turned Gotham into a labyrinth of crime, and everyone is already trapped inside with no way out. Batman issue 4 was a great introduction to the Minotaur and his grasp on organized crime in Gotham. I really like the sort of POV setting of it being all about the criminals and Batman just kind of being a force who literally smashes his way into the story halfway through and is kind of already on the back foot about what is going on in this gang war that has eventually erupted and has prompted the Minotaur to rear his head and finally show himself. He's a really fun villain. I quite like him. I like that the stakes for him are set pretty early, with him being a no-nonsense leader of the organized crime. He's willing to kill, willing to turn off the tap of money to all these people, so I'm intrigued to see how Batman's going to deal with that. I'm also really intrigued about the Zeller plot, since that's taking a very rom-com-esque twist, which I didn't see coming. But I quite like that. I like that like Bruce Wayne actually gets a part in the story, since it's something that often writers just don't really want to write. They don't want to write Bruce Wayne. I can understand that. You want to write Batman. You want to write about the guy in the cape and cowl. I get that, and I like that Fraction has found that great equilibrium with equal parts Batman and equal parts Bruce Wayne, and I'm really looking forward to the next issue. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.